Welcome everybody. If you are on Instagram and follow the top migraine accounts, then you probably already follow my guest, Amy of the Migraine Life with over 30,000 followers. She's one of my favorite accounts to follow on Instagram. I really appreciate Amy's positive approach to managing migraine. She focuses a lot about the beliefs we have about ourselves and migraine, and like me, she's also recovered from a time with chronic migraine and has benefited from brain retraining practices like pain reprocessing therapy. So I will briefly introduce Amy, but if you don't know me, I'm Adrienne. I am the creator of Yoga for Migraine and Beyond Migraine Coaching. And if you're with us live, we'd love to see you. Say hello in the comments, share where you're from. Make sure we know that this is working, doing this live, but it looks like it is. And if you are interested in doing some more yoga with us, starting next Monday, my migraine 6-week yoga series starts. This is where you can join us for short 30-minute yoga practices every Monday. You will get all the replays, plus I have additional pre-recorded hour-long practices and educational talks to really give you that jump start to your yoga for migraine practice. So I just added that in the comments. If you have questions for Amy, please drop them in the comments, and this is an open Q&A. We are live. So if you don't know Amy, the founder of the Migraine Life, she's a passionate migraine advocate and content creator who has transformed her struggle with chronic migraine into a mission to help others. In 2015, when she was 21, her life was turned upside down. She was diagnosed with chronic migraine, and we're definitely going to learn more about what that experience was like for her. But these days, through years of research, persistence, and self-advocacy, Amy's found her way into remission from chronic migraine, and she uses her experience and knowledge to educate and support others on their migraine journeys. She has built a supportive online community with over 30,000 people on Instagram living with migraine from all over the world. Hello, Amy. So good to have you here.
Hello. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be. Oh, my dog's also joining in
to
say hello.
We welcome all creatures.
Thank you for such a lovely introduction.
So good to have you, and we've got some friends joining us live, and if you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. But we'd love to start first with what was going on in your life when you were first diagnosed with migraine, and like how did it move into a chronic phase? Was that something that happened right away or over time?
Yeah, so I didn't have migraine growing up. As you said in the intro, I became chronic at 21. So I always used to say I didn't have a very natural progression. So many people have episodic, and then it gets worse, becomes more frequent. And, you know, if it's not managed or not treated, unfortunately, it can develop into chronic. I didn't have that experience at all. And actually, the more people I speak to over the years, I realize so many people also have this experience. So I'd had a couple of periods of time, both when I was at school and university, after periods of stress where I had a headache, not a migraine attack, a real what I would call a tension headache that lasted for a couple of weeks at a time. And I had one migraine attack, what I believe to be my first migraine attack, summer before I became chronic. And it was a really frightening experience for me because I was at work at the time, and I basically gradually lost all of my vision over the course of a couple of hours. It was now what I know is a really long aura. When we think of visual auras, it's normally in minutes to 60 minutes max normally for most people. But this really took time. And by the time I got to my home station, I had lost all vision. Wow. And I actually had to get a taxi, like fumbling around to get a taxi, just a short journey to my house so that I could get back at home. Went to bed. By that point, I had like throbbing head pain, had no idea at that point what it was because it was just brand new to me. Slept it off and was what I thought was okay again, back to normal. And then about 6 months later, at the start of 2015, I woke up on the 2nd of January, I can remember it so clearly, with head pain. I thought at the time maybe it's a bit of a delayed hangover from New Year's Eve, partied a bit too hard, but this headache just persisted all of January. It got worse and worse. And I was working in London at the time, going up and down to the city on the train each day, and I was getting to a point where I was feeling really nauseous with it. I was being sick sometimes in the mornings, and just had no idea what was happening. Basically, I was, taking painkillers, trying to do all the typical things you would, but it was so sudden for me. It really was like a switch suddenly turned on one day, and it didn't get turned off. And over the course of the next few months, I just got worse and worse. So not only did this constant head pain not go away, I was then having, at the time, what I called like spikes in head pain, but I now know are full-blown migraine attacks. And I was just so unwell, so poorly, getting worse and worse, no treatment, no idea what was going on. Because my mum had had a very rare neurological illness a few years prior, we actually went to see a private neurologist that we already had a good relationship with. And they did some testing and some scans, because initially, from like looking at my eyes, they thought maybe I did have something more sinister going on in my brain. And at the time, I remember, getting that all clear, everything's fine. Thank goodness, by the way. But at the time thinking, oh, like you need to find something. Like I had no concept that migraine was this really serious, complex neurological disease. And I'm like thinking I'm being fobbed off a bit, that, you've got mixed tension migraine headache. Like, why have you not found a brain tumor? Like that's how unwell I am. That's how it felt at the time. So it really just snowballed from there. They started me off with some one of the older oral preventatives, amitriptyline, and kind of left me to it whilst I was referred back into kind of the main system, if you like, here in the NHS. And I wasn't actually diagnosed formally with chronic migraine until later on that summer, so in the July. And I was seen by a headache specialist. The neurologist I'd seen before wasn't a headache specialist. And that's when really I was put on a kind of proper treatment plan. And by this point, I not only had the day head pain, but I was having, I actually can't remember that first year, quite the attack days, but kind of upwards of 15 to 20 attack days per month on top of that.
So it sounds like it did come on quite strong and intense, and within a year, kind of just went from zero to chronic. And that must have been a very scary period, especially in university, and I'm sure trying to navigate that. Did that affect your school and how you were able to take classes?
So it was actually after university. So I the summer that I said I experienced a migraine attack, that was a few months after I'd finished, and then so I graduated, and then I just started my first graduate job in the September, and then in that January is when I got it. So I do feel, even at the time, I felt very fortunate that I got through my degree, and not only did I get through my degree, but I had, deep time at university. I really partied hard, worked hard, like socialized hard, played tennis, did all the things, and had such a wonderful time. But I think that even that contrast between doing that to basically being in my bedroom all day, every day, was a lot to deal with physically and mentally.
Yeah. And I know you've had some experience with pain reprocessing therapy and brain training. Like, do you have a sense of what you think might have contributed to just an increase of symptoms at that time? Was life just very stressful, or was there anything significant?
Yeah. So I love talking about this now, because when I got sick and when I was so unwell, people always used to say, "Oh, your job caused this. Like you were so stressed out, Amy. Like you were working silly hours in London. you were so stressed. And I was really like, like I felt really annoyed that people were saying, and this was even before I had an understanding of like stress doesn't cause you to have migraine, but it can trigger things off and, you know, all of that stuff. I felt really somehow that it was people putting blame on me, like it's my fault somehow. So I was always very defensive of that. And I do find it kind of amusing now because they were right. Like I was so stressed. I also put huge amounts of pressure on myself. I still do. It's kind of the thing I always have to come back to in whatever I do. I put huge amounts. It doesn't even come from elsewhere. It took me a long time to learn this. It all comes from me, and partly that's good because it means you've got drive, and within the migraine space, it means I actually do things and make change. But it also, my head doesn't like it, and that kind of combination, I think, of stress and working long hours, not looking after myself probably very well in terms of the basics, hydration, sleep, eating well, all those things, I think just fried my nervous system and really let things off in a bad way. And looking back at those periods of time where I had headache for 2 weeks at a time, they were both what I would now describe as like letdown stress. So it was a period, I think, at school when I don't know what was happening, but something was quite stressful. And then after I handed in my dissertation at university, that now I'm like, oh, classic, of course. But at the time, you just think, oh, I've been a bit stressed and run down. But understanding that and not being defensive of it and actually owning it has really enabled me and enabled my own recovery and helped me check in at times when life happens and keep me in a place of remission rather than letting it snowball again.
I'm so glad you shared some of those different phases of just the way you think about migraine and your beliefs about what maybe exacerbated. Of course, migraine is not caused by stress or but we do know stress is one of the biggest triggers for migraine. And so when I interview folks, I always like to find out, when your symptoms got worse, was there something major going on in your lives? And often there is, or maybe something happened before. It might not be big T trauma, but I feel like I have a very similar migraine journey. Like my migraine started in my mid-20s, kind of when I started my first job as a school teacher. And there's a lot of intensity, and it does change our nervous system. And we do have some friends here live, so if you guys, while you're hearing Amy's story and have other questions that you want to ask her, please drop them in the comments. So kind of moving your migraine journey along, you're finally getting some treatment, but still imagine in a pretty bad place. What was your journey being out of that chronic migraine phase of your life?
So it took a long time. And I actually got a lot worse before I got better. Some of that was just through to, I think, the progression. If you go straight into having chronic migraine and you don't have effective treatments or tools, whatever else you can harness in your life, it only gets worse and worse because it has nothing to bring back some control. And I knew nothing. It was like really being thrown into the deep end. I didn't have family members with migraine. I didn't have close friends with migraine. I was the person who thought migraine was a bad headache. Like I had everything to learn. So it did take time. I tried a lot of treatments. I put so much energy into, I just have to find that one preventative medication. Like that's the thing that's going to pull me out. And it can be life-changing for people, but it can also just play a piece of the puzzle. That's how I like to talk about it. It doesn't have to be this groundbreaking thing. I also spent a lot of time, unfortunately, looking at my neck. I had so much neck pain, and I then was convinced after seeing so many physios, chiropractors, osteopaths, I'm sure people watching will relate.
In there.
Convinced that I had all these problems with my neck and that I just needed to pay another how much money for another how many sessions and have my neck manipulated and cracked and all the things, and it never helped. Nothing. Everyone told me they'd fix it. Everyone told me there was this problem. It didn't help, and it was actually at the Migraine World Summit where I finally learned, oh, it can be a symptom of the migraine itself, which I now know to be true now that I'm doing better, my neck pain's gone. So there was a whole period of kind of going down, I would making mistakes on the journey, but trying to figure out how to get through. And then gradually over time, I learned about devices. I found devices that were for me. I did find a preventative treatment that helped a lot. It cut my migraine attack days in half, but I was still in chronic migraine. I learned more about lifestyle factors, things I could do at home, building a toolkit. And then finally, the kind of real shift for me, I was doing so much better than I was, and I was starting to do some work again and get different parts of my life back. But I was still at this point daily head pain and 10 attack days a month, which is still pretty debilitated. That's when I really was moving towards learning about pain science and started doing pain reprocessing therapy for myself. And that for me was really like the final piece of the puzzle. And it took me quite quickly, actually, in terms of my attack days, reduced significantly, and then finally into a place of remission, which I've been in for a few years now. Always for remission from chronic. And actually, I truly believe that part of the puzzle, the brain training, the pain reprocessing therapy, I know lots of people like to call it different things, has taken my recovery to a point it would never have got to through kind of the treatments and the devices and all of that. I know, some people are sort of super responders with some of the medications, but the freedom and control I now have with my migraine, thanks to brain training, thanks to pain reprocessing therapy, I think is truly life-changing.
Yeah, that's so good to hear that. It took a while. It was a lot of trial and error, which all of us with migraine, I know we've gone through. And then stacking those things up, right? It wasn't just one thing, but it does sound like, once you discovered like how brain retraining, how changing your beliefs about migraine, that's really what kind of got that process catalyzed to be in a place where you're feeling more stable. And I, again, in so many ways feel very similar in my migraine journey and discovering pain reprocessing therapy and getting trained and also working with my clients with it. There is so many angles we can use to address migraine. And sure, most of us start with medication because that's what we see offered, but there's devices, there's how we live, and then there's how we think and feel. I know there's different ideas about saying, have we recovered from chronic migraine? Are we in remission? But it sounds like remission didn't happen by accident for you. Like this is something you worked at creating for yourself. And do you kind of see it like that? Like this was something that you helped yourself arrive to? Or do you feel like this is kind of like, oh, now I'm in a good phase?
No, there was no luck involved. I feel like I actually said this to my mom the other day. I said sometimes I look at some other people, especially people who are doing my course now, or other people in the community who are doing better, and I'm almost like, oh, are they really lucky? Like they've just made a few changes and they're doing so well, or was I really unlucky? Because I tried, after a while, I did a lot of the right things as well. It wasn't that I was doing all these things wrong. I did initially do a lot of wrong things, but I did get a lot of it right, and I still was doing really badly for a while. I'm like, oh, what is it about this? And I kind of think I'm not super like it's gonna sound a bit woo-woo, I think I'm gonna say, but I almost feel like I had to go through all of it and experience all these different things in order to be at a place now where I can like truly help people in the best possible way. I don't really think like I was put here to go through it to show. I kind of feel like if I tried that first or second oral preventative and it worked really well for me, I wouldn't be here doing this. I wouldn't be advocating for migraine. I wouldn't be helping other people. So in a weird way, I kind of feel grateful for it now and my journey, but I know other people who are still stuck in it will probably be like, what? Like awful.
Right.
But yeah, it is, you do feel very differently once you are out the other side, I think.
Yeah. And what do you feel like for you made that difference when you understood how your beliefs, your thoughts, how you respond differently to pain? How did that change things rather than kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I go to bed at the same time, I got my meds, I got my devices. Like, how did
Yeah.
that change your journey?
It all really came to a recognition that I was so fearful. I knew, even before I started doing pain processing therapy, I knew my brain, number one, was so highly sensitized. Like I knew from learning about central sensitization and just my experience. I used to say everything is a trigger for me, everything sets off my head. Well, in reality, okay, yes, everything was a trigger for me. Not really. My brain was just interpreting every single thing, whether I just like stood outside for 5 minutes, I took a shower, whatever I did, I got a migraine attack. So I knew there was this like circuitry issue going on, but I also knew I was like really, really stuck in a fear pain cycle. And I knew that needed to be broken. And actually, I was looking back through some of my posts from a good few years before I really started doing PRT for myself. And like constantly talking about this fear and breaking through. And I kind of want to go back and like hug Amy back then, who was just like, really trying to put it together and to get there. But for a long time, I think I was stuck in this place of understanding that this was my problem and this was a key kind of piece for me that I needed to work through, but not really having the tools or the know-how to actually implement any of the strategies from PRT to help myself out of it.
Yeah, no, and there are so many nuances and layers, but when sometimes it just coalesces, when you kind of added all those different parts of the toolkit, and then you get that momentum to really start feeling better in your mood, like being able to do more things, getting out more, and then that helps to decrease the pain, and we develop that positive momentum rather than the negative one that happens when we're just stuck at home.
I also think, I just thought as you said that I don't know, if you followed me for a while, you'll know I'm naturally a very positive, upbeat person. And through my years of recovery, I've always called the whole big thing recovery. I kind of think I dismissed working on my mindset or even thinking about my thoughts or my emotions because I was like, but I'm a positive person. Like I always believed I would get better. I didn't really get pulled into a real dark place. I had really bad days, don't get me wrong, but I was very fortunate that I didn't get depressed. I was very anxious and fearful, but I kind of really want to talk about that for anyone else that's also very positive and upbeat and thinks, oh, that somehow it's just about thinking positive thoughts, because it's so much more than that. I think that's like a real misconception people have about that. I was a really positive person, yet I still had a lot to do in terms of addressing my thoughts, my beliefs, my emotions, and all of the stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, and not to say, I think the tricky part with doing the work that we do is that we don't want to. We have migraine too. We are definitely don't want to put blame on people, and I think sometimes when people talk about mindset, thoughts, emotions, and like kind of the things we can and can't control, people can understandably feel like we're blaming you if you don't think the right way. And it's not about that, but it's really, to me, empowering us to like, what are those things that we can shift in ourselves to feel like we have some agency over migraine, rather than just blaming if we have a migraine attack because I didn't think the right way.
Yeah, it's so true. It's really empowering. I see it as, and I know lots of people don't, because if someone had told me about pain reprocessing therapy in, I don't know, 2018, 2019, I would have been like, so insulted, what are you saying? And just, I would have had all the kind of common misconceptions, I think. It is, when you understand how the brain works and how pain works, it's exciting. I'm like, you actually get some control back. You get to rewire your brain. I think it's so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question from Terry about, just your toolkit. What is in your toolkit? She also asked, like, what device do you use? So what is, Amy today, beyond chronic migraine? What are things that are still in your toolkit for migraine?
So I will answer this actually from a place of when I was still in chronic migraine and now as well, because I'm very fortunate that I'm having so few migraine attacks, or even like head pain at all, that I really don't utilize my physical toolkit anymore. Very, very few tools. And it's largely I rely on this tool here, my mindset and my brain for overcoming it. The most I would use now is like take a couple of paracetamol or something, but it's not particularly new tool to learn about. But back when I was chronic and really relying on my physical toolkit, the Cephaly was my favorite device. I've tried most of them out, but that was the one that really saved me when I was having way more attack days than allowed acute medication days. It really not only helps me with when I would take acute medication, that kind of combination effect, but it was for a long time the difference of me being able to function in the evenings. So my pain for a long time got worse throughout the day, and by 4 or 5 o'clock, I was in a really bad way. And if I didn't use my Cephaly, I would basically then be done. I wouldn't be able to function for the rest of the evening. And when you're in that severe end of chronic, it's sometimes less about getting to like crystal clear or getting rid of an attack, and it's really like, can you eat dinner with your family tonight, or can you just be like able to listen to an audiobook for a few hours rather than like silence in the dark, severe throbbing pain. And to me, Cephaly, really provided that relief for me.
I'll second that. Cephaly was one of the first devices that
so
really
personal,
helped
isn't
me.
it?
Yeah.
There's so many different ones. It didn't work preventatively for me, but there's so many different ones that, I hear success on lots of them, but I will always love Cephaly. And then I lived in earplugs for a while. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with earplugs, because I think they actually made my noise sensitivity a lot worse. As did wearing sunglasses too much. I did rely on earplugs for a long time. I tried lots of different, noise cancelling headphones, all sorts, but I actually have a pair still on my desk. But I just like the little foam, easy, very cheap earplugs from Amazon. I had some eye masks I would use, and then the other like key one for me when I think of my like setup during a bad pain day would also be ice. I really liked ice on my neck and my occipitals at the back. I got a lot of occipital nerve pain. My personal favorite was the headache hat, the one which you can wrap around. It just stays cold for so much longer than the gel ones. I think they're my main tools.
Yeah, that's just amazing to hear these days. Like, yeah, so no prescriptions, like you're feeling.
No, well, I don't have so I used to take a triptan with a what are they called? Like naproxen, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
And that was like my acute it changed a bit over the years, but that was kind of my typical. So I don't even have that on my script anymore. And in terms of preventatives, I was on a combination of Pizotifen and Adjuvie for several years. That's kind of the combo that got me to 10 attack days a month. And when I was suddenly then doing so well with pain reprocessing therapy and my attacks came down, after a bit of time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try losing one of them. Let's just see how it goes. What have I got to lose? So I came off Pizotifen very slowly, very gradually, under care and supervision of my doctor, who was like, what? Like, you're doing how? They just cannot believe it, these doctors. Yeah. And then at the end of last year, kind of, I think it was like November, December time, I very gradually started coming off my Adjuvie injections as well. Again, I'm someone who's not like, you have to, I have to. I didn't put any pressure. Again, pressure bad for me. But I just thought, let's see, because even people I think who haven't done the brain retraining at times, they do come off Botox, they do come off the anti-CGRPs, and sometimes their brain has almost reset, if you like, and maintains that level of recovery still. And I now haven't had an injection since, I think it was in April, my last one, so 5 months, and I'm doing great. I don't plan on taking another one, but I know that I can if I need to, and they're there, and hopefully I don't though need to.
Yeah, that's amazing. So happy to hear, yeah, how stable things have become. Um, yeah, maybe just in the last few minutes that we have, I'd love to hear about like how and why you started your Instagram account and what you're doing now to help people. So yeah, what about, did you start your Instagram account like in the middle of your chronic journey or when did that start?
So I started the Migraine Life about a year or just over a year into my journey of chronic migraine in 2016. And it actually came from one of the worst migraine attacks I ever had. So it went on for over 2 weeks.
Mm.
And I just had so much time lying there. And I kept thinking to myself, there must be someone else out there
Mm.
who is going through something similar, who knows this. Because at that point in time, even a year in, I had no idea, or I didn't know anyone else who had chronic migraine. I then discovered, a few friends who had very episodic attacks, things like that. But I just, it was like beyond me that someone could be having this frequency and severity. So that's how it started. At the end of that attack, I just made this little page and I shared a few educational posts I'd found online. They weren't even my posts. I think I'd cringe if I went back and looked now. But what's actually nice is some of the very first few people who followed me, I remember getting 100 followers and being like mind blown
Yeah.
that not about followers, but that there were 100 people who also had migraine, and a lot of them had chronic migraine, and I could relate to. It was just insane to me. And some of those first kind of people I'm still in contact with today, and we've grown together over the years. So that's where it started. It was purely for like a selfish, I need to find someone else who understands this. And then it's really grown over the years from me. It almost was like a dear diary for a while, like an outlet for me and somewhere to share really openly. I have no idea why I felt so comfortable sharing so openly on the internet with strangers, but somehow actually there is that separation. I found it harder sharing with kind of people in my real life, if you like, my personal life. So it was this outlet, and I shared all the treatments I went through, the ups, the downs, a lot of downs those first few years. And then as I started to educate myself and do the research and learn about advocacy, it really shifted into what it is today and my mission, which is to help people to educate themselves and take back control of their migraine, and crucially to feel less alone. Migraine is so damn isolating. And when you're lying in bed in the dark on your own, you feel like you're the only person in the world going through it, especially if you are like me and you didn't know many people in your life. But the reality is it's so common. 1 in 7 people have migraine worldwide. I think it's probably even higher than that, really. And that to me has always been a big part of it, helping people to know that they're not alone. And that's kind of all taken me to where I am today with the course. So,
tell us about
for
that.
years.
And I dropped your Instagram link in the comments too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, come join the big, it's like one big family over there. Yeah.
Tell us about the program that you do now.
So I launched at the start of the year my online course, which is called Managing Migraine, Survive to Thrive. And it really came from a place quite a few years ago, even when I was still chronic. I hadn't actually done pain reprocessing therapy yet, but I knew I was sitting on all of this knowledge, all of this like wisdom, not only from my own experience of all this trial and error, all this research. I became such a migraine nerd. I can't even tell you the amount of like research papers I was doing, then through my different advocacy work and just from talking to so many people, I think from all over the world with migraine. So I was like, I need to somehow like put this all together. And that's really where the course came from, because I'd been sharing as much as I could through Instagram, through my blog for a while. But I just wanted there to be one place where someone could come and learn essentially everything I wish I had been told when I was first diagnosed. So the course itself is the framework of the course is based on what I like to call the Migraine Life method, which takes people through education, making sure people actually understand what migraine is as a neurological disorder, then treatments, so not only medications and pills, but what other treatment options are available and how to navigate medical care, then at-home management, a lot of what we've spoken about this evening, but also, setting people up for success in their life, whether it's building a toolkit or making changes to their lifestyle and routine. Then communication, which I think so often gets forgotten about, but actually teaching people how to talk about migraine in their life, how to ask for what they need, accommodations, whether it's work, school, with their partner. Mindset is a huge part, of course, not only how to manage a migraine attack mentally at the time it happens, but also all of the brain retraining stuff that I know you teach as well so much, giving people kind of start at that into that world and the techniques that help me. And then finally, of course, like last part of the Migraine Life method is support. So alongside the course, there is a private Facebook group where people can connect with other people doing the course and have a real nice community element there. And then they can get basically ongoing personalized support from me as well. Ask me any questions and I'm there to help. So yeah, that's like the new thing in the Migraine Life model. It's not that new anymore. And it's been incredible to help people in a kind of longer, more impactful way. So yeah, that's Managing Migraine Survival.
Yeah, I know when you first described it to me, it was just like, wow, I wish when I was first diagnosed, like I would have had access that would have saved me many tears and pain. And I think you really created just a comprehensive program for people to feel better on all those levels, right? Not just medication, but also, how to communicate, how to think differently about migraine. So yeah, I've sent your link in the comments. Is there any other things you'd like to leave the audience with, or ways people can follow or connect with you?
I'd just really like to leave with that if you are not in a good place right now with your migraine, if you are struggling, if you are not sure where to turn next, just to keep hope and to keep positive and to really scale back. Sometimes people look at the really big picture, and I think sometimes when you are having a hard time, especially with migraine, it's helpful to just bring it back to today. If today feels too much, just the hour you're on or just the moment you're in right now. And if you're struggling to find hope, connecting with people like us who have been through it and who know what it is, like, you can borrow my hope for a bit. Yeah, please keep going. Truly, truly better days are possible for you as well.
Well, I'm so glad that you were able to join us and share your experience. And yeah, also just, for people to realize it doesn't change overnight. Amy's doing it amazing now, and that took a lot of trial and error and changes on her part. But I think your story also absolutely gives hope, inspiration that things can get better. And that's one of the big reasons I love connecting and following you. It's like things can get better. It's not going to be like this forever. Well, thank you for being here in the Yoga for Migraine Facebook group, and check out Amy on Instagram, check out her course, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you, everybody.
Lovely. Thanks.